Hey everyone. Get cozy, settle into a comfy position, and let these calming tales whisk you away to a peaceful night's sleep. Drop a comment below on what time and from where you are watching this video and share your own late-night ritual that helps you drift off. The air beyond the door was thick with the stench of decay, laced with the metallic tang of old magic. Vesemir descended a narrow stone staircase, his boots silent on the worn steps. The darkness pressed against him, heavy and alive, but his witcher senses cut through it, sharpening the outlines of the tunnel. His medallion thrummed against his chest, its vibrations a constant warning of the power sealed within this forgotten vault. Kaer Morhen was riddled with such places. Hidden chambers built by the mages who'd shaped the wolf school, meant to guard their secrets or their sins. The staircase ended in a cavernous chamber, its walls carved with runes that glowed faintly, casting an eerie blue light. At the center stood a stone altar, blackened by time and stained with something darker. Vesemir's eyes narrowed as he approached, recognizing the sigils etched into the stone, wards of binding, containment, and blood. This was no mere storage room. It was a prison or a tomb. "Silvara," he called, his voice echoing off the walls. "If you're here, show yourself." A soft laugh answered, chillingly familiar. She stepped from the shadows, her white cloak blending with the dim light. "You're persistent, wolf," Silvara said, her eyes glinting like polished amber. "Most would have turned back by now." "Most aren't witchers," Vesemir replied, his sword still in hand. "What is this place? And don't give me riddles." She tilted her head, studying him. "This is the heart of Kaer Morhen's power. The mages who built this keep didn't just craft witchers. They bound the land itself to your kind. Blood for blood, life for life. When the pogrom came, that bond was broken and something woke." Vesemir's jaw tightened. The chronicles he'd read in the library hinted at such rituals, but the details were always vague, written in the cryptic prose of mages who trusted no one. "You're saying the pogrom did more than kill my brothers. It unleashed something." "Not unleashed," Silvara corrected, her voice sharp. "It twisted what was already here. The magic in this vault was meant to protect the wolf school, but blood spilled and betrayal corrupted it. The wraith in the forest is a manifestation of that betrayal, fed by the pain of those who died here." He stepped closer to the altar, his medallion buzzing so fiercely it felt like a heartbeat. "And the mage you mentioned? Torvald?" Silvara's smile faded, her expression unreadable. Torvald was no ordinary mage. He was one of the architects of the Trial of the Grasses, a master of blood magic. The records say he died, but I've seen him, felt him, in the mountains. He's alive, Vesemir, and he's using the old rituals to strengthen the wraith. He wants to rebuild what was lost, but not for your kind. For his own. Vesemir's mind raced. Torvald had been a name whispered in fear even among the witchers. Brilliant, ruthless, and obsessed with perfecting the mutations that created them. If he'd survived the pogrom, hiding in the wilds all these years, he'd had decades to fester, to plan. "Why come to me?" Vesemir asked. "You're no ally of the witchers. What's your stake?" Silvara's eyes darkened, and for a moment she seemed almost human. "I was bound to someone here long ago. A witcher. He died in the pogrom, but his soul is trapped, tied to this place by Torvald's magic. I want him free." Vesemir studied her, searching for deception. Her words rang with truth, but there was something she wasn't saying. "A witcher," he said slowly. "Who?" "His name was Kael," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was everything." The name hit Vesemir like a blade. Kael had been his friend, his brother in arms, a witcher whose laughter could fill the great hall. He'd died defending the keep, or so Vesemir had thought. If his soul was trapped, it explained the unease that had haunted Kaer Morhen for decades. "If Torvald's behind this," Vesemir said, "I'll find him. But you're coming with me. I don't trust you alone in my home." Silvara nodded, her expression unreadable. "Then we hunt together, wolf. But be warned, Torvald is no mere man anymore. The magic he wields is older than you know." Vesemir turned back to the altar, his fingers tracing the runes. They pulsed under his touch, warm and alive. Whatever Torvald was doing, it started here, in the heart of Kaer Morhen. And Vesemir would end it or die trying. The forest beyond Kaer Morhen was a labyrinth of shadow and snow, the pines looming like silent judges. Vesemir led the way, his sword sheathed but his senses sharp, every rustle of leaves or snap of a branch setting his nerves on edge. Silvara followed, her presence unnervingly silent, her cloak blending with the snow. The medallion at Vesemir's throat hummed steadily, a reminder of the danger lurking in the mountains. They followed the trail of the wraith, its presence marked by claw-torn trees and patches of frozen blood. The hunter's body had been only the latest of its kills. Vesemir had found signs of others in the past weeks, travelers and trappers vanishing into the wilds. The wraith was no ordinary monster, it moved with purpose, drawn to Kaer Morhen like a moth to flame. Torvald's hiding somewhere close, Vesemir said, crouching to examine a set of tracks, too large for a man, too deliberate for a beast. These aren't the wraiths. Something else is out here. Silvara knelt beside him, her fingers brushing the snow. Golems, she said. Torvald's work. He's always been fond of constructs. Vesemir grunted. Golems were rare, difficult to create, and fiercely loyal to their masters. If Torvald was using them, he was building an army. You know a lot about him, he said, his tone laced with suspicion. More than you're letting on. Silvara's eyes met his, unyielding. I've hunted him longer than you've mourned your brothers, Witcher. Don't mistake knowledge for loyalty. He stood, brushing snow from his hands. Stay sharp. If golems are here, we're walking into a trap. They pressed deeper into the forest, the air growing colder, the medallion's hum intensifying. The trees thinned, revealing a clearing dominated by a circle of standing stones, their surfaces carved with runes that matched those in the vault. At the center stood a figure, cloaked in tattered robes, his face hidden beneath a hood. Vesemir's hand went to his sword, but Silvara grabbed his arm. Wait, she hissed. That's not Torvald. It's a decoy. The figure turned, its movements jerky, unnatural. Its hood fell back, revealing a face of stone, eyes glowing red. A golem. Vesemir cast Quen, a golden shield flaring around him, just as the creature charged, its fists swinging like battering rams. He dodged, rolling to the side, and slashed at its leg, his silver blade sparking against the enchanted stone. The golem didn't flinch, its strength relentless. Silvara moved like a wraith herself, her hands weaving signs in the air. A bolt of blue light shot from her fingers, striking the golem's chest. It staggered, cracks spreading across its surface, but it didn't fall. Vesemir followed with Ard, a telekinetic blast that sent the creature crashing into a stone. The impact shook the clearing, but the golem rose again, its eyes blazing. Damn it, Vesemir growled. How many of these does he have? Too many, Silvara said, her voice strained as she cast another spell. We need to find Torvald. This is just a distraction. Vesemir nodded, his mind racing. The golem was a guardian meant to keep them from the true threat. He scanned the clearing, spotting a faint glow beyond the stones. A portal shimmering with unstable magic. There, he said, pointing. That's our way. The golem lunged again, but Vesemir was ready. He cast Igni, flames roaring across the golem's stone body, slowing it just enough. He sprinted for the portal, Silvara at his side, and they dove through, the world twisting around them in a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. They emerged in a cavern, its walls lined with glowing crystals that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and blood, and Vesemir's medallion vibrated so intensely it felt like it might shatter. At the far end of the cavern stood a figure, tall and gaunt, his hands raised over a circle of runes that burned with crimson light. Torvald. He turned as they entered, his face a ruin of scars and madness, his eyes glowing with the same unnatural fire as the golem's. Vesemir, he rasped, his voice like dry leaves. You've come to witness the rebirth. Vesemir's grip tightened on his sword. Torvald. You should have stayed dead. The mage laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the cavern. Dead? No, Witcher. I transcended. The wolf school was weak, bound by petty morality. I will make it strong again. Silvara stepped forward, her voice cold. You're a fool, Torvald. Your wraith will destroy everything, not rebuild it. Torvald's eyes flicked to her, and for a moment recognition flashed across his face. Silvara. Still chasing ghosts, I see. Did you think you could save him? Vesemir glanced at Silvara, catching the pain in her eyes. Yeah. This was about more than the wraith, it was personal. Enough talk, he said, raising his sword. This ends now. Torvald's laughter grew wilder. You can't stop it, Witcher. The wraith is bound to the blood of Kaer Morhen. It will consume you as it consumed your brothers. Vesemir charged, his blade flashing, but Torvald was fast, his hands weaving spells that crackled through the air. A wave of force knocked Vesemir back, slamming him against the cavern wall. Silvara countered, her own magic clashing with Torvald's in a storm of light. The cavern shook, crystals shattering as the two powers collided. Vesemir rolled to his feet, casting Erden to trap Torvald in a circle of glyphs. The mage snarled, his spells faltering, but the wraith was stirring now, its form coalescing from the shadows, a towering mass of claws and malice, its eyes fixed on Vesemir. "Stay back!" Silvara shouted, her hands glowing as she tried to hold the wraith at bay. "It's tied to him." Vesemir didn't hesitate. He lunged at Torvald, his sword slicing through the mage's defenses. Blood sprayed and Torvald screamed, the wraith mirroring his pain. Vesemir struck again, driving his blade into Torvald's chest. The mage fell, his eyes wide with disbelief, and the wraith dissolved into mist, its screams fading. The cavern went silent, save for the drip of water and Vesemir's ragged breathing. Silvara knelt beside Torvald's body, her face unreadable. "It's done," she whispered. Vesemir wiped the blood from his sword. "Not yet. Kael." She nodded, her eyes distant. "His soul is still here. The altar in the vault, it's the key." They returned to Kaer Morhen, the weight of the fight heavy on them. The vault was as they'd left it, the altar pulsing with dark energy. Silvara placed her hands on the stone, chanting softly, and Vesemir felt a presence. Kael's presence. Flicker and fade, finally free. Silvara turned to him, her eyes wet. "Thank you, Wolf." Vesemir nodded, his heart heavy. "Go. Don't come back." They returned to Kaer Morhen, the weight of the fight heavy on them. The vault was as they'd left it, the altar pulsing with dark energy. Silvara placed her hands on the stone, chanting softly, and Vesemir felt a presence. Kael's presence. Flicker, but it didn't fade. The air grew colder, the runes on the altar flaring brighter, and Silvara's chant faltered. Her eyes widened, a rare flash of fear crossing her face. "It's not working," she said, her voice tight. "The bond is stronger than I thought." Vesemir's hand tightened on his sword hilt, his medallion buzzing against his chest. "What's stopping it?" "Torvald's dead." Silvara stepped back from the altar, her hands trembling. Torvald wasn't the only one binding Kael's soul. There's another anchor, something deeper, tied to the keep itself. She turned to Vesemir, her gaze piercing. "The blood magic in Kaer Morhen's foundations, it's still active. It's feeding on the pain of the pogrom, and it won't let him go." Vesemir's jaw clenched. The mages who'd built the wolf school had woven their spells too well, lacing the very stones with rituals that refused to die. "Then we find the anchor and break it," he said. "Where do we start?" Silvara's eyes flicked to the altar, then to the walls where the runes pulsed like veins. "The vault is only part of it. There's a chamber beneath the keep, deeper than this one. The mages called it the sanctum. It's where they performed the first trials of the grasses, where they spilled the blood that bound the land." Vesemir's stomach twisted. He'd heard whispers of the sanctum as a young witcher, tales of a place even the masters feared to tread. It was said to be sealed after the first witchers were created, its entrance lost to time. "If it's real, it's hidden," he said. "I've walked every inch of this keep. There's no door, no passage." Silvara's lips curved into a faint, bitter smile. "You think like a witcher, Vesemir. Mages don't hide things with stone, they hide them with magic." She knelt by the altar, her fingers tracing a faint crack in the floor. "There's a ward here, cloaking the entrance. I can break it, but it'll take time, and it won't be quiet." "Do it," Vesemir said, his voice firm. "I'll stand watch." She nodded and began to chant, her hands weaving intricate signs in the air. The runes on the altar flared, then dimmed, and the air grew heavy, pressing against Vesemir's skin. His medallion vibrated furiously, a warning of the power Silvara was unleashing. The crack in the floor widened, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness, its edges slick with moisture and moss. The air that rushed up from below was foul, carrying the stench of blood and rot. Vesemir's senses sharpened, catching the faint hum of magic, old, angry magic. "Stay close," he said, drawing his sword. "Whatever's down there isn't friendly." Silvara stood, her face pale but resolute. It never was. They descended, the staircase spiraling deeper than Vesemir had thought possible. The walls were carved with more runes, their glow faint and sickly like a dying ember. The air grew colder, thicker, as if the sanctum itself were breathing. Vesemir's medallion was a constant buzz now, and he felt the weight of unseen eyes watching from the shadows. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. The floor was a mosaic of black stone, inlaid with patterns that twisted the eye, forming sigils of binding and sacrifice. At the center stood a massive crystal, its surface pulsing with crimson light, like a heart. Chains of silver hung from the ceiling, their ends embedded in the crystal, and within it, Vesemir saw a faint shape, a man suspended, his face contorted in silent agony. "Kael," Silvara whispered, her voice breaking. Vesemir's heart sank. The crystal was no mere prison. It was a conduit, feeding on Kael's soul to power the magic that bound the wraith to Kaer Morhen. "Can you free him?" he asked, his eyes scanning the chamber for threats. Silvara approached the crystal, her hands glowing with soft light. "I can try. But the sanctum is alive, Vesemir. It'll fight to keep him." As if in answer, the chamber rumbled, the runes on the floor flaring. Shadows coalesced at the edges of the room, forming shapes. Wraiths, smaller than the one in the forest but no less deadly. Their eyes glowed with the same crimson as the crystal, and their claws gleamed like polished bone. Vesemir raised his sword, casting Quen to shield himself. "Work fast," he growled. "I'll hold them off." The wraiths lunged, their movements swift and silent. Vesemir met them with steel and fire, his blade slicing through one while Igni burned another to ash. But they kept coming, pouring from the shadows like a tide. Silvara chanted louder, her voice rising over the shrieks of the wraiths, her hands pressed against the crystal. The chains rattled and the figure within stirred, its eyes flickering open. "Vesemir!" Silvara shouted. "The crystal, it's tied to the keep's wards. If I break it, Kaer Morhen could collapse." He parried a wraith's claw, his blade sparking. "Do it. We'll deal with the consequences." Silvara's chant reached a crescendo, and the crystal cracked, a sound like thunder. The wraiths screamed, their forms dissolving, but the chamber shook violently, stones falling from the ceiling. Vesemir grabbed Silvara, pulling her back as the crystal shattered, releasing a wave of energy that knocked them to the ground. Kael's form collapsed, free but fading, his eyes meeting Silvara's for a fleeting moment before he vanished. The sanctum groaned, its walls cracking. Vesemir hauled Silvara to her feet. "Move!" he roared, dragging her toward the staircase as the chamber began to collapse. They stumbled up the staircase, the sanctum's collapse chasing them like a beast. Dust and debris filled the air, the runes on the walls flickering out one by one. Vesemir's lungs burned, but he pushed forward, Silvara's hand gripped tightly in his. The vault above was no safer, cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling, and the altar had split in two, its magic spent. They burst into the great hall just as the floor buckled, sending tables and chairs sliding. The fire in the hearth had gone out, and the air was thick with the scent of stone and decay. Vesemir didn't stop, pulling Silvara toward the courtyard. The keep was dying, its ancient wards unraveling with the destruction of the crystal. Kaer Morhen, the last bastion of the wolf school, was tearing itself apart. They reached the courtyard as a tower collapsed, its stones crashing into the snow. Vesemir's heart twisted. He'd spent centuries in this keep, trained here, buried his brothers here. But there was no time for sentiment. "The gate!" he shouted, pointing to the main entrance. "We need to get out." Silvara nodded, her face streaked with dust and grief. They ran, dodging falling debris, the ground shaking beneath them. The gate loomed ahead, its iron hinges groaning as the walls around it cracked. Vesemir cast Ard, blasting the gate open, and they stumbled into the snow outside just as the keep's central tower fell, a roar of stone and dust that echoed through the mountains. They collapsed in the snow, gasping, the cold biting at their skin. Kaer Morhen was a ruin now, its walls broken, its secrets buried. Vesemir looked back, his chest tight. "It's gone," he said, his voice hollow. Silvara sat up, her eyes fixed on the wreckage. "Not all of it," she said softly. "Kael's free. That's what matters." Vesemir turned to her, his expression hard. "And you? What now?" She met his gaze, her eyes no longer glowing but still sharp. I'll vanish like I always do. But you, Vesemir, you need to rebuild. The wolf school isn't just stone and mortar. It's you. He grunted, looking away. The idea of rebuilding felt impossible, but her words stirred something in him. The wolves were few now, scattered across the continent, but they weren't gone. Not yet. A faint sound broke the silence, a low growl from the forest. Vesemir's medallion hummed, weaker now but still alive. He stood, drawing his sword. We're not done yet, he said. Something's still out there. Silvara rose, her hands glowing faintly. The wraith's gone, but Torvald's magic lingers. There could be more golems or worse. Vesemir nodded, his eyes scanning the trees. Then we hunt. Together. They moved into the forest, the snow crunching under their boots, the ruins of Kaer Morhen fading behind them. The blue mountains were silent, but Vesemir knew better than to trust the quiet. Whatever lingered, whatever Torvald had left behind, he'd face it. He was a witcher, a wolf, and this was his path. The forest was a maze of shadows, the pines heavy with fresh snow. Vesemir's senses were sharp, catching every rustle, every shift in the wind. His medallion vibrated steadily, a sign that Torvald's magic hadn't died with him. Silvara moved at his side, her presence silent but heavy with purpose. The air smelled of pine and blood, and Vesemir's grip on his sword tightened. There, Silvara said, pointing to a cluster of trees where the snow was disturbed, marked by deep, uneven tracks. Not golems, something else, something alive. Vesemir crouched, examining the prints. They were clawed, too large for a wolf or bear, and they reeked of the same dark magic that had filled the sanctum. Another wraith? He asked, his voice low. Silvara shook her head. No, this is different. Torvald was experimenting, blending blood magic with something older. A chimera, maybe, or a construct of his own making. Vesemir's eyes narrowed. Torvald had always been reckless, pushing the boundaries of what magic could do. The trial of the grasses had been his obsession, but if he'd gone further, created something new. We find it, we kill it, he said. No more games. They followed the tracks deeper into the forest, the air growing colder, the medallion's hum intensifying. The trees parted, revealing a ravine, its walls steep and jagged. At the bottom, a shape moved, a hulking creature, its body a grotesque blend of flesh and stone, its eyes glowing with the same crimson light as the crystal in the sanctum. It turned, sensing them, and let out a roar that shook the snow from the branches. Vesemir cast Quen, the golden shield flaring around him. Stay back, he told Silvara. This one's mine. She didn't argue, but her hands glowed, ready to support him. The creature charged, its claws tearing through the snow, and Vesemir met it with steel, his blade slashing at its flank. The silver sparked against its stone-like hide, drawing blood that hissed as it hit the ground. The creature roared again, swiping at him with a massive arm. Vesemir dodged, rolling to the side, and cast Igni, flames roaring across the creature's body. It staggered but didn't fall, its eyes blazing with unnatural fury. Silvara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The eyes. They're the anchor. Vesemir nodded, lunging forward. He drove his sword into one of the creature's glowing eyes, twisting the blade. The creature screamed, its body convulsing, and collapsed, its stone hide cracking like glass. Vesemir stepped back, panting, his sword dripping with black ichor. Silvara approached, her face grim. Torvald's work, she said. He was building an army. This was just one. Vesemir wiped his blade clean. Then we keep hunting. Until every trace of him is gone. They stood in the ravine, the snow falling around them, the creature's body steaming in the cold. Vesemir's breath clouded in the frigid air, his sword still dripping with the creature's black ichor. The medallion at his throat hummed faintly, its vibrations a lingering warning that Torvald's magic was far from spent. Silvara knelt beside the creature's corpse, her fingers tracing the jagged lines where stone met flesh. Her face was taut, her eyes distant, as if seeing something beyond the ravine. There's more, she said, her voice low. This wasn't the only one. Torvald's experiments ran deep, deeper than I realized. Vesemir sheathed his sword, his jaw tight. How many more? And where? The Blue Mountains were vast, their valleys and caves a labyrinth where a mage like Torvald could hide an army. The thought of more abominations like this one, lurking in the shadows, made his blood run cold. Silvara stood, brushing snow from her cloak. The tracks lead north toward the old mines. Torvald used them during the wolf school's prime for alchemical supplies. If he's hidden anything, it'll be there. Vesemir nodded, his mind racing. The mines were a half-day's trek, abandoned since the pogrom had gutted the keep's resources. They were a warren of tunnels, some natural, some carved by mages for purposes long forgotten. If Torvald had set up a lair there, it would be fortified, trapped, and crawling with whatever horrors he'd conjured. "We move now," he said, "before the trail goes cold." Silvara's eyes met his, sharp and unyielding. "You're exhausted, Wolf? Even witchers have limits." He grunted, ignoring the ache in his bones. "I'll rest when this is done. Let's go." They set out, the snow crunching under their boots, the wind howling through the ravine. The forest gave way to rocky slopes, the pines thinning as they climbed higher into the mountains. Vesemir's senses were on edge, catching every shift in the wind, every faint scent of magic. His medallion buzzed steadily, a reminder that danger was close. Silvara moved beside him, her silence heavier than the snow. Whatever she was, sorceress, spirit, or something else, she carried her own burdens tied to Kael and the keep's bloody past. The mines came into view at dusk, their entrance a gaping maw in the mountainside, framed by rusted iron beams. The air around it was heavy, thick with the same foul magic Vesemir had felt in the sanctum. He drew his sword, the silver gleaming in the fading light. "Stay sharp," he said. "If Torvald's here, he'll know we're coming." Silvara nodded, her hands glowing faintly as she prepared a spell. "The mines are warded. I can feel them, old magic, layered with Torvald's own. Breaking through will take time." "Then we don't break through," Vesemir said. "We go around. There's a secondary shaft used for ventilation. It's narrow, but it'll get us inside." They circled the mountainside, snow swirling around them, until Vesemir found the shaft, a jagged crack hidden behind a cluster of boulders. He cast Ard, the telekinetic blast shifting the stones just enough to clear a path. The shaft was tight, barely wide enough for his shoulders, but he squeezed through, Silvara following. The air inside was damp, smelling of earth and decay, and the walls were slick with moisture. The shaft opened into a tunnel, its walls lined with glowing crystals similar to those in the sanctum. Vesemir's medallion vibrated harder, the hum almost painful. "He's close," he whispered, his voice echoing faintly. "Keep your eyes open." They moved deeper, the tunnel branching into a maze of passages. Faint sounds reached Vesemir's ears, scraping like claws on stone, and a low rhythmic pulsing like a heartbeat. He signaled Silvara to stop, crouching to examine the floor. Tracks, clawed and uneven, crisscrossed the dirt, leading to a larger chamber ahead. The pulsing grew louder, and the air grew thick with the scent of blood. Vesemir peered into the chamber, his cat-like eyes piercing the gloom. At its center stood another crystal, smaller than the one in the sanctum but pulsing with the same crimson light. Around it were cages, rusted and warped, filled with bones and scraps of cloth. And guarding the crystal were three creatures, chimeras like the one in the ravine, their bodies a grotesque blend of flesh, stone and metal, their eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. "Torvald's army," Silvara whispered, her voice tight. "He's been building them for years." Vesemir's grip on his sword tightened. "Then we tear it down. Can you disrupt the crystal?" She nodded, her hands already glowing. "It's the anchor like the last one, but it's stronger, tied to more than just Kael's soul. If I break it, the backlash could be catastrophic." "Do what you can," Vesemir said. "I'll handle the guards." He stepped into the chamber, casting Quen to shield himself. The chimeras turned, their roars shaking the walls, and charged. Vesemir moved like a shadow, his blade flashing as he struck at the nearest creature's eyes. The silver bit deep, drawing a spray of ichor, but the chimera didn't fall, its stone hide deflecting his blows. He dodged a massive claw rolling to the side and cast Igni, flames roaring across the creature's body. Silvara moved to the crystal, her chants filling the air with a sharp, electric hum. The other chimeras lunged at her, but Vesemir intercepted, his sword slashing through one's leg. It stumbled, giving him an opening to drive his blade into its eye. The creature collapsed, but the third was on him, its claws grazing his shoulder, tearing through his armor. Pain flared, but Vesemir pushed it down, casting Ard to knock the chimera back. Silvara, he shouted, parrying another blow. Hurry! Her voice rose, the crystal's glow flickering. The chamber shook, dust raining from the ceiling, and the chimeras faltered, their movements slowing. Vesemir seized the chance, driving his sword into the second chimera's eye, then turning to face the third. But the crystal cracked, a sound like breaking glass, and a wave of energy surged through the chamber, knocking Vesemir to his knees. Silvara staggered, her hands still pressed to the crystal. It's breaking, she cried. But it's not enough, there's another anchor, deeper in the mines. Vesemir cursed, dodging the third chimera's claws. The chamber was collapsing, the walls cracking like the sanctum had. We need to move, he roared, grabbing Silvara's arm. They ran, the chimera's roars fading behind them as the tunnel shook, stones falling around them. They stumbled into another passage, narrower and darker, the pulsing growing louder. Vesemir's shoulder burned, blood seeping through his armor, but he pushed forward. The mines were a death trap, and Torvald's legacy was far from dead. Whatever lay ahead, it was the key to ending this, or it would end them. Chapter 10, The Heart of the Mines. The tunnel descended sharply, the air growing colder and heavier with every step. Vesemir's medallion buzzed relentlessly, the vibrations crawling up his spine. His shoulder throbbed, the wound from the chimera's claw slowing him down, but he gritted his teeth and pressed on. Silvara's face was pale, her breath shallow, the strain of her magic taking its toll. The pulsing sound grew louder, a rhythmic thrum that seemed to come from the earth itself. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, its walls glittering with veins of crystal that pulsed in time with the sound. At the center stood a massive structure, a monolith of black stone, carved with runes that glowed with a sickly green light. Chains hung from the ceiling, their ends embedded in the monolith, and within its surface, Vesemir saw faint shapes moving, like shadows trapped in glass. Souls, he realized, his stomach twisting. Dozens of them, witchers and others, bound to Torvald's magic. This is it, Silvara said, her voice barely above a whisper. The final anchor. Torvald's masterpiece. Vesemir's eyes narrowed. Masterpiece? It's a prison. She nodded, her expression grim. He used the blood of the pogrom to fuel it. Every death, every scream, it's all here, feeding his creations. If we destroy it, the chimeras die and the souls are freed. But what? Vesemir snapped, his patience fraying. It's tied to the mountains themselves, she said. Breaking it could bring the mines down. Maybe more. Vesemir's jaw tightened. Kaer Morhen was already gone, its stones scattered in the snow. If the mines collapsed, it could trigger avalanches, bury the valley, wipe out what little remained of the Wolf School's legacy. But he saw the faces in the monolith, Kael, his brothers, the boys who died in the trials. He couldn't leave them trapped. Then we do it carefully, he said. Can you control the backlash? Silvara hesitated, then nodded. I'll try. But we'll need to weaken the monolith first. The runes, they're the key. Disrupt them and I can break the anchor. Vesemir scanned the cavern, spotting movement in the shadows. More chimeras, smaller but faster, their eyes glowing like embers. I'll handle the guards. You focus on the runes. She began chanting, her hands weaving patterns of light, while Vesemir moved to intercept the chimeras. They were agile, darting around him, their claws slashing at his legs. He cast Erden, trapping one in a circle of glyphs, and drove his sword into its eye. The others circled, wary now, but Vesemir was relentless, his blade a blur as he cut them down. Silvara's chants grew louder, the runes on the monolith flickering. The cavern shook, pebbles falling from the ceiling, and the trapped souls stirred, their forms pressing against the stone. Vesemir felt their pain, their rage, a chorus of voices echoing in his mind. He fought harder, Igni burning through the chimeras, his sword finding their weaknesses. The monolith cracked, a jagged line splitting its surface. Silvara's voice broke, her body trembling with the effort. It's working, she shouted. Keep them off me. Vesemir roared, casting Ard to blast the remaining chimeras back. The cavern was collapsing now, the walls groaning, but he stood his ground, shielding Silvara as she poured her magic into the monolith. The runes flared one last time, then went dark and the monolith shattered, releasing a wave of energy that knocked Vesemir to the ground. The souls rose, faint and shimmering, their forms dissolving into the air. Vesemir saw Kael among them, his face peaceful for the first time. Silvara fell to her knees, her strength spent, tears streaming down her face. The cavern shook violently, the ceiling cracking above them. "Move!" Vesemir shouted, pulling her to her feet. They ran, the tunnel collapsing behind them, the air thick with dust and the screams of dying magic. They stumbled into the snow outside, the mines roaring as they caved in, the mountains trembling with the force of it. They collapsed, gasping, the cold biting at their skin. The valley was silent now, the medallion at Vesemir's throat still. The chimeras were gone, the souls freed, but the cost was high. Kaer Morhen was rubble, the mines buried, and the blue mountains felt emptier than ever. Silvara looked at him, her eyes hollow but resolute. "It's done," she said. "Kael's free. They all are." Vesemir nodded, his chest tight. "And Torvald's legacy?" "Buried," she said. "But the mountains remember. They always will." He stood, brushing snow from his armor. The wound in his shoulder burned, but he ignored it. The fight was over, but the path of a witcher never ended. "You're leaving?" he said, not a question. Silvara nodded, her cloak blending with the snow. "My debt is paid. But you, Vesemir, you carry the wolf school now. Don't let it die." He didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The snow fell, soft and relentless, covering the scars of the battle. He turned north toward the unknown, his sword at his side. The mountains were quiet, but Vesemir knew better than to trust the silence. There were always monsters, always battles. And he was still a wolf. Chapter 11, The Long Road Ahead. The snow crunched under Vesemir's boots as he trekked north, the ruins of Kaer Morhen fading into the distance. Silvara had vanished without a word, her presence as fleeting as the wind. The blue mountains loomed around him, their peaks sharp against the gray sky, and his medallion hung silent, a rare moment of peace. But peace was a fleeting thing for a witcher, and Vesemir's mind was already turning to what lay ahead. The destruction of the monolith had ended Torvald's immediate threat, but questions gnawed at him. How had Torvald survived the pogrom? What had driven him to create such abominations? And what other secrets lay buried in the mountains, waiting to be unearthed? The wolf school's history was a tapestry of blood and betrayal, and Vesemir felt its weight more than ever. He stopped at a ridge overlooking the valley, the wind tugging at his cloak. Below, the remains of Kaer Morhen were barely visible, a scattering of stones swallowed by snow. He'd spent centuries in that keep, training, fighting, mourning. It had been his home, his anchor. Now it was gone, and he was adrift, the last of the wolves in a world that no longer needed them. But Silvara's words echoed in his mind. "You carry the wolf school now." He wasn't alone, not entirely. There were others scattered across the continent. Geralt, Eskel, Lambert. They were his family, his legacy. If the wolf school was to survive, it would be through them, through the bonds they'd forged in blood and steel. A faint sound broke his thoughts, a low growl carried on the wind. Vesemir's hand went to his sword, his senses sharpening. The medallion hummed faintly, a sign of magic or danger. He scanned the ridge, spotting movement in the trees below. A shadow too large for a wolf, too swift for a bear. Another of Torvald's creations, or something else entirely. He descended the ridge, his boots silent in the snow, and followed the shadow into the forest. The air grew colder, the medallion's hum growing stronger. The trees parted, revealing a clearing where a figure stood, cloaked and hooded, its back to him. Not a chimera, not a wraith, but something human, or close to it. "Show yourself," Vesemir called, his voice steady. The figure turned, lowering its hood. A woman, her face pale and sharp, her eyes glowing with a faint, unnatural light. Not Silvara, but someone like her, steeped in magic. "Vesemir of Kaer Morhen," she said, her voice smooth and cold. "You've been busy." "Who are you?" he demanded, his sword half drawn. "And what do you want?" She smiled, a predator's smile. "My name is Lyria. And I want what Torvald wanted, the power of the wolf school. You've destroyed his work, but you've only delayed the inevitable. The blood of Kaer Morhen calls to those who know how to listen." Vesemir's eyes narrowed. "You're a mage. One of Torvald's." "No," she said, stepping closer. "I'm something more. Torvald was a fool, blinded by his own ambition. I'm not so reckless. Join me, Witcher. The wolf school could rise again, stronger than ever." Vesemir's grip on his sword tightened. "The wolf school isn't a tool for your kind. Walk away or you'll end like Torvald." Lyria's smile didn't falter. "Bold words. But you're alone, Vesemir. Your keep is gone, your brothers scattered. What can one wolf do against the tide? He drew his sword, the silver gleaming. Enough. She laughed, raising her hands, and the air crackled with magic. The clearing shook, the snow rising in a whirlwind, and Vesemir braced himself. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. He was a witcher, a wolf, and as long as he drew breath, he'd face whatever came. The mountains were calling and he would answer.